The War Council had been arguing for 3 cycles. Commander Vrek'thal of the Korthanian Imperial Fleet stood at the observation deck, watching the blue-green planet rotate below. His 4 eyes tracked the swirling cloud patterns with the kind of detachment that came from having glassed 17 worlds before breakfast. Metaphorically speaking, of course. The Korthanian didn't eat breakfast. They absorbed nutrient paste through their secondary mouth, which was far less poetic, but infinitely more efficient. "Sir, the scouts have confirmed it," Lieutenant Mordax announced, her voice carrying that wonderful mixture of excitement and dread that made military briefings so entertaining. "The human settlement is located in Sector 7. Population, 43 adults, 19 juveniles. 62 targets." Vrek'thal mused, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species. "The Galactic Council will be pleased. Humans have been spreading across the outer colonies like a particularly aggressive fungus." "With respect, Commander," Mordax interjected, "these are civilians." "With respect, Lieutenant, they're humans. You've read the reports. They're Category 5 Deathworlders. Every single one of them is a potential threat." Vrek'thal turned from the viewport, his crimson armor gleaming under the ship's harsh lighting. "Besides, they chose to settle on a restricted zone. That jungle down there? It's classified as a Level 9 hazard. Nothing should be able to survive there for more than a week. The humans have been there for 3 years, sir." "Exactly my point. They're either incredibly stupid or incredibly dangerous. Either way, they need to go." Mordax's tentacles twitched nervously. She'd been in the fleet for 12 cycles, long enough to know when to shut up and when to push back. This felt like a pushing back moment. "Sir, perhaps we could simply relocate them? The Council prefers minimal bloodshed when dealing with registered sapients." Vrek'thal's laugh sounded like gravel being crushed in a waste compressor. "Lieutenant, I have personally overseen the cleansing of 43 hostile settlements. Do you know what I've learned? Mercy is just delayed regret. We go in, we eliminate the threat, we file the paperwork. Simple. Clean. Efficient. If you say so, sir." "I do say so. Assemble the hunting party. I want our 12 best operatives. Full combat loadout. This will be a training exercise as much as a cleansing operation." 6 hours later, Vrek'thal stood in the armory, inspecting his team. They were magnificent, really. Each one a veteran of countless campaigns. Warriors from 6 different species, united in their purpose to maintain galactic order and occasionally commit light genocide when the paperwork checked out. There was Grultok, a Matharian berserker whose idea of subtlety was only breaking half your bones instead of all of them. Standing next to him was Ixixvara, a Silithian infiltrator who could become invisible in 17 different light spectrums. The rest of the team was equally impressive, a collection of the galaxy's most effective killers, now tasked with eliminating a group of human farmers. "Listen up," Vrek'thal began, his voice amplified through his helmet's external speakers. "The target is a human settlement designated Haven's Rest. Adorable name, isn't it? Almost makes you forget they're Deathworlders. Our mission is simple. Total elimination. No survivors. No witnesses. We drop at dawn, sweep through the settlement, and we're back on the ship before lunch." "What about the jungle, sir?" asked Pixlon, a Karian sharpshooter whose 3 hands could reload a plasma rifle faster than most species could blink. "What about it?" "The preliminary scans show indigenous life forms. Predators. Big ones." Vrek'thal waved a dismissive claw. "We're apex predators from a dozen different worlds. Whatever's down there should be worried about us, not the other way around." He paused, letting that sink in. "However, standard protocol applies. Stay in formation, watch your sectors, and remember, humans are tricky. They don't follow conventional combat doctrine. They improvise. They adapt. They're like cockroaches, but taller and more annoying." The team laughed, that universal sound of soldiers preparing to do something terrible and pretending it was normal. The drop pods hit the jungle canopy exactly at dawn, tearing through the dense foliage like meteors with a very specific destination in mind. Vrek'thal emerged from his pod, immediately scanning the environment. The air was thick, humid, filled with sounds he couldn't identify. Birds maybe, or things pretending to be birds until you got close enough for them to eat your face. "Form up," he commanded. and his team materialized from the undergrowth like particularly lethal mushrooms. They moved through the jungle in a tactical formation that had been refined over centuries of warfare. Silent, efficient, deadly. The settlement was 2 kilometers north, nestled in a clearing beside a river. Intel suggested the humans had built rudimentary structures, established agriculture, and were generally being peaceful and non-threatening, which was obviously a trap. They'd covered maybe half a kilometer when Grultok raised a massive fist, signaling a halt. "Contact," he growled, pointing to a trail that cut through the vegetation. It was small, too small for an adult human. A juvenile's footprint, pressed into the soft earth, leading deeper into the jungle, away from the settlement. "Tracks," Zhiksvara observed, her sensors flickering. "Fresh, maybe an hour old." Vrek'thal considered. The smart move was to ignore it, stick to the mission, hit the settlement. But the tracks nagged at him. A human child, alone in this jungle? Either it was already dead, which would be one less target to worry about, or it was somehow surviving, which meant the intelligence reports were even more wrong than usual. "Zhiksvara, Pixlon, check it out. The rest of us continue to the primary target. Rendezvous in 2 hours." The 2 operatives nodded and disappeared into the foliage, following the small footprints. Commander Vrek'thal would later reflect, during his extended medical recovery, that this was the exact moment everything went catastrophically wrong. The trail led Zhiksvara and Pixlon deeper into the jungle, into areas where the canopy grew so thick that only scattered beams of sunlight penetrated the gloom. The footprints continued, small and deliberate, occasionally accompanied by something else. Marks in the dirt. Claw marks, but different from any predator in their database. "This is peculiar," Zhiksvara whispered, her invisibility field shimmering. "The child is traveling with something." "A pet?" Pixlon suggested, his rifles raised and ready. "On a death world? Pets don't exist here. Only things that haven't killed you yet." They emerged into a small clearing, and that's when they saw it. The human child. He couldn't have been more than 10 cycles old by human standards. Dirty blonde hair, torn clothing, bare feet. He was crouched beside a fallen log, apparently examining something on the bark, completely oblivious to the 2 heavily armed aliens watching him from the shadows. "Target acquired," Pixlon murmured into his comm. "1 juvenile human. No adults visible. Eliminate and return." Vrek'thal's voice crackled back. Pixlon raised his rifle, sighting down the scope. Easy shot, 50 meters. The kid wouldn't even know what hit him. His finger began to squeeze the trigger. Then the log moved. Except it wasn't a log. It was low to the ground, maybe half a meter tall, covered in gray and black fur that bristled like angry wire. Small, beady eyes. Powerful jaws. It turned its head, and Pixlon realized with dawning horror that he recognized this creature from the xenobiology databases. A honey badger. Native to Earth. Classified as a level 7 threat despite its size. Known for exactly one thing. Not caring. About anything. Ever. The child looked up at the creature and smiled. Actually smiled. "Hey, Brutus. Found some grubs. Want to share?" The honey badger made a chittering sound that might have been affection or might have been a warning that it would eat the child's face if the grubs weren't satisfactory. With honey badgers, it was hard to tell. Zhiksvara's sensors went berserk. "Pixlon, abort. Fall back. Now." But Pixlon was a professional. A veteran. He'd killed things bigger and meaner than one Earth mammal having a bad hair day. He adjusted his aim, targeting the child first, then the creature. He never got the shot off. The honey badger's head snapped around, fixing on their position with an intensity that suggested it could somehow see through Zhiksvara's invisibility field and Pixlon's camouflage and possibly through time itself to judge their ancestors for their poor life choices. The child followed the badger's gaze, his eyes widening. "Oh, you guys should probably run." Then Brutus charged. People who've never seen a honey badger in full attack mode cannot truly comprehend the experience. It's not the size. It's not even the speed, though they're faster than they have any right to be. It's the absolute, unwavering commitment to violence. Honey badgers don't do threats. They don't posture. They see a problem, and they solve it with teeth and claws in a complete disregard for personal safety or the laws of physics. Pixlon got off one shot that should have blown the creature apart. Should have. The plasma bolt hit Brutus square in the chest, and for a moment, The honey badger's fur smoked. Then Brutus shook it off like water and kept coming. Impossible, Pixlon breathed, which were, unfortunately for him, his last words. Brutus hit him like a furry missile, claws raking across his armor, finding gaps, finding flesh. Pixlon screamed, a sound that cut off abruptly when powerful jaws clamped around his throat. HFY opened fire, but Brutus was already moving, too fast, too angry, too committed to his life's work of making everything within biting distance regret their existence. She activated her teleporter, desperate to escape, but something was jamming the signal. The jungle? The planet? The honey badger's sheer force of will? Who knew? The child walked over to where Pixlon lay, now very dead. He looked sad, but not surprised. I tried to warn you, he said softly. Brutus doesn't like guns, or strangers, or Tuesdays. It's Tuesday, isn't it? Brutus, now covered in purple alien blood, made a satisfied grunt and started grooming himself. HFY ran. She was a trained infiltrator, a master of escape and evasion. She'd extracted herself from situations that would make a tactical retreat look like a victory parade. But the jungle seemed alive, hostile, every vine catching her feet, every branch slapping her face, and behind her, she could hear something following. Not running, walking. The child and his monster, taking their time, because they knew something she was only beginning to understand. In this jungle, there was nowhere to run. Back at the settlement, Commander Vrek'thal was having what military historians would later call a very bad morning. The attack had started perfectly. His team had breached the perimeter, weapons hot, ready to engage. Then every human in the settlement had looked at them with expressions of profound sadness and disappointment, and one of them, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, had said, "Oh dear, you didn't happen to see a little boy and his badger on the way here, did you?" Which was, in retrospect, not the response Vrek'thal had been expecting. His comm crackled. Static. Then screaming. Pixlon's voice, cut short. Then nothing. HFY, report, he demanded. More static. Then, faintly, words. Desperate. Terrified. It won't stop. He won't call it off. Oh gods, it's coming back for another pass. Then, silence. Vrek'thal felt something cold settle in his stomach. All units, new priority, extract to the landing zone. Mission abort. I repeat, mission abort. The humans didn't try to stop them, they just watched, with those same sad, knowing expressions, as the Corthanian hunting party scrambled back toward their drop pods. They almost made it. The child emerged from the tree line like a small, dirty ghost. Brutus padded beside him, looking significantly fluffier and more satisfied than before. There were pieces of alien armor stuck in his fur. "Hi," the boy said, waving. His name was Tommy, though Vrek'thal wouldn't learn that until much later. "You came to hurt my friends." It wasn't a question. Galactic, never one for subtlety, roared and charged. 300 kilos of Matherian battle rage, enhanced with combat stimulants, armed with a plasma axe that could cut through reinforced titanium. Tommy didn't move. Brutus did. What happened next violated several laws of physics and at least one Geneva Convention. The honey badger moved like liquid death. Under Galactic's swing, up his armor, claws finding purchase, jaws finding weak points. Galactic tried to grab him, but you don't grab honey badgers. You survive them, if you're lucky, and pray they get bored. Galactic was not lucky. The remaining hunters opened fire, a coordinated barrage of plasma, kinetic rounds, and experimental weapons that shouldn't have been deployed outside laboratory settings. The jungle lit up with destructive energy. When the smoke cleared, the boy was still standing, protected by a fallen log. Brutus was on that log, grooming one paw, completely unconcerned. "You missed," Tommy observed. Then the jungle came alive. Because here's the thing about death worlds. They don't just have one apex predator. They have layers of them. Ecosystems built on violence and survival. And humans? Humans were smart enough to make friends with the absolute worst of them. From the trees came sounds, howls, roars, chittering, things that had been watching, waiting, and had apparently decided that these aliens were fair game. Vrek'thal saw his team, his elite hunters, scramble backward as Earth's finest nightmare fuel emerged from every shadow. He saw things with too many legs, things with too many teeth, things that shouldn't exist outside fever dreams. And leading them, casual as could be, was a 10-year-old boy and his honey badger. "You should go," Tommy said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Brutus is still hungry, and when he's hungry, he gets cranky. You wouldn't like him when he's cranky." Vrek'thal, who had glassed 17 worlds before metaphorical breakfast, who had faced down pirates and rebels and would-be conquerors, looked at the small human child and his absolutely unhinged pet, and made the smartest decision of his military career. He ran. His remaining team followed, discipline abandoned, tactics forgotten, reduced to the primal state of prey fleeing predator. They reached the drop pods, crammed inside, initiated emergency launch protocols. As they rocketed back toward the ship, Vrek'thal looked down through the pod's viewport and saw the settlement below. The humans had gathered in the clearing, watching them leave. The child stood at the front, one hand raised in farewell. Beside him, the honey badger sat, looking disappointed that the fun had ended so soon. Vrek'thal activated the fleetcom. "Target is reinforced. Recommend we designate this planet as restricted territory and never speak of this again." "Casualties," the admiral's voice crackled back. Vrek'thal looked at his team. 5 left out of 12. 3 wounded. All traumatized. "Acceptable losses, sir." "And the human settlement?" "Still there, sir. Respectfully suggest we leave it that way." There was a long pause. "Explain." "Sir, they have a honey badger." Another pause. Longer. Then, "Understood. Updating the database. Heaven's Rest is now classified as do not engage under any circumstances." "Good work, Commander." "Good work," Vrek'thal thought bitterly, watching the planet shrink below them. Sure. If by good work you meant surviving an encounter with humanity's idea of a pet, he would file his report. He would recommend medals for the survivors. He would carefully omit the part where they'd been routed by a child who probably wasn't even old enough to vote. And he would never, ever, set foot on another human colony as long as he lived. Below, on the planet's surface, Tommy walked back to the settlement, Brutus trotting beside him. His mother met him at the edge of the clearing, hands on hips, that universal expression of parental exasperation crossing her face. "Tommy, what have I told you about taking Brutus into the jungle alone? That I shouldn't? That you shouldn't? Those aliens could have hurt you." Tommy looked back toward where the drop pods had launched. "I don't think they wanted to hurt me, Mom. Not after they met Brutus." His mother sighed, then smiled, ruffling his hair. "Well, at least this time they left without making too much mess. Last time we had visitors, it took weeks to clean up all the scorch marks. Should I give Brutus extra dinner?" "Tommy, we always give Brutus extra dinner. Otherwise he eats the furniture." In the weeks that followed, word spread through the Galactic Council. A new notation appeared in the human settlement database. A simple addendum that would save countless lives. Haven's Rest. Population, 62 humans, 1 honey badger. Classification, exterminatus prohibited. Reason, honey badger. And across the galaxy, military commanders read that report, looked at the casualty figures, watched the grainy footage from Vrek'thal's helmet cam, and came to the same conclusion. Humans were crazy enough to befriend the things that made Deathworlders scary, and that was exactly why you didn't mess with them. 3 months after what the Corthanian Imperial Fleet now referred to as the incident we don't talk about, a very different ship entered orbit around Haven's Rest. This one wasn't military. It was diplomatic, which somehow made it more dangerous. Diplomats carried briefcases instead of plasma rifles, wore tailored suits instead of armor, and could kill your civilization with paperwork instead of orbital bombardment. Progress, some called it. Ambassador Thelkara of the Unified Galactic Assembly stood in the observation lounge, reviewing the file on her tablet with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for diffusing antimatter bombs, which, given the contents of the report, wasn't far off. "Let me make certain I understand this correctly," she said to her aide, a nervous Polarian named Jex who had drawn the short straw for this assignment. Commander Vrek'thal, a decorated military officer with 43 successful campaigns, retreated from a settlement of farmers because of one small mammal? That's the official report, Ambassador. The official report is clearly fiction designed to hide incompetence. The video footage suggests otherwise. Ma'am. Thelkara pulled up the helmet cam recording. watching frame by frame as something small, furry, and absolutely deranged tore through trained soldiers like they were made of tissue paper and wishful thinking. She paused on a close-up of the creature's face, zooming in on those small, dark eyes that seemed to contain nothing but pure, distilled malice. What in the 17 hells is that thing? Earth designation, honey badger. Scientific name, Mellivora capensis. Native to Africa and parts of Asia. Average weight, 9 to 16 kilograms. Known for aggressive territorial behavior, resistance to venom, and what the humans call an absolute lack of chill. It weighs 9 kilograms. Approximately. Yes. Our soldiers weigh between 80 and 300 kilograms, depending on species. Correct, Ambassador. So you're telling me that this 9-kilogram ball of fur defeated multiple heavily armed operatives who collectively weighed over a metric ton? Jex pulled up another file, this one marked with so many warning labels it looked like a hazard assessment checklist. According to Earth zoological databases, honey badgers have been observed fighting lions, surviving cobra bites, and breaking out of maximum security enclosures. There's a documented case of one breaking into a research facility 6 times using increasingly sophisticated methods. The researchers eventually gave up. Thelkara closed her eyes, feeling the beginning of what humans called a migraine forming behind her ocular sensors. Why are we even here, Jex? Why not just leave these lunatics alone on their death world with their death pets? Because, Ambassador, they've applied for full membership in the Galactic Assembly. And according to treaty provisions, we have to conduct a formal evaluation. Of course they have. Because humans look at a galaxy-spanning civilization millions of years old and think, yes, we belong there, us and our psychotic weasels. She straightened her diplomatic robes, checking her appearance in the polished viewport. Very well. Prepare the shuttle. We'll go down, conduct the evaluation, and be back before dinner. How dangerous could farmers be? Jex said nothing, but his skin tone shifted to a pale yellow that, in Polarian body language, roughly translated to, "You're going to regret saying that." The shuttle landed in the same clearing where Vrek'thal's forces had touched down, though now there was a makeshift sign planted nearby. "Welcome visitors. Please check all weapons at the community center. No exceptions." "Yes, that means you." Thelkara emerged with her diplomatic team, 6 of them total, all unarmed as per protocol. The air hit her immediately, thick and humid, carrying scents she couldn't identify. Her security sensors were going haywire, detecting life signs in every direction, most of them tagged as potential threats. A welcoming committee approached from the settlement. 5 humans, dressed in practical work clothes, smiling in that peculiar way humans had that made you wonder if they were genuinely friendly or planning something terrible. With humans, it could honestly go either way. The woman in front extended her hand, another human custom that Thelkara had studied. The handshake, a greeting that originated from showing you weren't holding a weapon. Charming species, really. Ambassador Thelkara, I presume? I'm Margaret Reeves, Settlement Coordinator. Welcome to Haven's Rest. Thelkara accepted the handshake, noting the woman's grip was firm but not aggressive. Points for restraint. Thank you for receiving us, Coordinator Reeves. I trust our arrival wasn't inconvenient? Not at all. We don't get many visitors these days. Well, not many who leave under their own power. Margaret's smile didn't waver. That was a joke. Mostly. How reassuring. Margaret gestured toward the settlement. Come on, let me show you around. We've prepared accommodations for your team, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by what we've built here. As they walked, Thelkara conducted her assessment. The settlement was more developed than the reports suggested. Prefabricated structures certainly, but modified and expanded. Solar collectors on every roof. Water purification systems humming quietly. Gardens laid out in efficient rows. Growing crops she recognized and several she didn't. You've done well here, she admitted. The reports indicated a struggling colony. The reports were 6 months old. We've been busy. Margaret pointed to a large building at the settlement center. That's our community center, school, and medical facility combined. We built it after the last military visit. Figured if people kept showing up to shoot us, we'd need somewhere to treat injuries. You speak very casually about attempted extermination. Ambassador, we're from Earth. Attempted extermination is basically our species' hobby. We've survived ice ages, Plagues, wars, natural disasters, and that one time Gary tried cooking with the reactor coolant. We're hard to get rid of. They entered the community center, which was surprisingly spacious. Children sat in one corner, engaged in lessons from a human male using a holographic display. Teenagers worked on what looked like engineering projects. Adults moved between stations, conducting business with the comfortable efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were doing. Normal. Almost disappointingly normal. Then Thelkara heard it. A sound that made her blood freeze and her survival instincts scream. A low, grunting chitter that seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. "Ah," Margaret said, following her gaze. "You've spotted Brutus. Don't worry, he's friendly. Mostly." The honey badger sat near the children's area, watching the youngsters with what might have been paternal interest, or might have been calculating which one would taste best. A small boy, the same one from the military footage, sat beside the creature, reading from a datapad. "That's Tommy, my son. And yes, that's the honey badger that sent your military friends running. Before you ask, no, we can't get rid of him. Brutus adopted us, not the other way around. You don't say no to a honey badger. You just learn to live with your choices." Thelkara approached slowly, activating her recording equipment. "May I speak with your son?" "Sure, but fair warning, he's 10. Expect 10-year-old logic." Tommy looked up as they approached, his face brightening. Brutus, however, fixed Thelkara with a stare that suggested he was considering whether diplomats tasted different from soldiers. "Hello," Tommy said cheerfully. "Are you here to shoot us too?" "No. I'm here to evaluate your settlement for membership in the Galactic Assembly." "Cool. We have cookies if you want some. Mom made them. She's really good at cookies. Not so good at alien relations, though. Last time she tried diplomacy, she accidentally insulted a Vraxian trade delegate by offering them dairy products. The Vraxians are lactose intolerant as a species. Yeah, we figured that out pretty quick." Tommy scratched behind Brutus's ears, which seemed inadvisable, but the creature accepted it with something resembling contentment. "Do you want to know about our settlement? I helped with the agricultural surveys." Thelkara sat down, carefully maintaining distance from the honey badger. "I would be very interested in that." For the next hour, Tommy explained their operations with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of a child who genuinely loved his home. The crop rotation schedules, the water management systems, the careful integration with the local ecosystem, learning which plants were edible, which animals were dangerous, and which could be, if not befriended, at least convinced not to eat you immediately. "The jungle's not that scary once you understand it," Tommy said. "You just have to respect it. Like Brutus. He could kill pretty much anything here, but he doesn't because we feed him and let him sleep in the sun. Everything has something it wants. You figure that out, you can live with anything. Even honey badgers? Especially honey badgers. They're honest. They don't pretend to be nice and then shoot you. They're mean right up front, so you know where you stand." Thelkara found herself smiling, a gesture her species shared with humans. "That's quite philosophical for a 10-year-old. I've had a lot of time to think. Not much else to do out here except farming, studying, and watching Brutus terrorize the local wildlife." Tommy's expression grew serious. "Are you going to let us join the assembly? Or are we too dangerous because we have Brutus?" "The evaluation process is complex, Tommy. It's not just about one honey badger. But it kind of is, though. That's why those soldiers came, right? Because humans are scary? And then Brutus made it worse?" He looked at his pet, who was now grooming himself with single-minded focus. "He didn't mean to scare everyone. He just doesn't like guns. Bad experiences on Earth. Bad experiences with guns. Poachers. That's how we found him. He was injured, probably would have died. Dad patched him up, and Brutus decided we were pack. He's been with us ever since." Tommy's voice dropped. "I know he's dangerous. I know he hurts people sometimes, but he's also saved our lives more times than I can count. The jungle has things worse than honey badgers, Ambassador. A lot worse. And Brutus keeps them away." Before Thelkara could respond, an alarm blared through the settlement. Not the human alarm system, her own security sensor, detecting something approaching fast from the jungle's edge. Margaret's voice came over the community center speakers, calm but urgent. "Everyone inside. We have visitors. Unidentified species, multiple contacts, moving in from the eastern perimeter. Thelkara stood, her diplomatic instincts warring with her survival instincts. What is that? That, Margaret said, appearing from a back room with what looked disturbingly like a hunting rifle, is why we built walls. The settlement's population moved with practiced efficiency, securing doors, gathering in central locations. No panic, no screaming. Just calm, coordinated response. Through the community center's windows, Thelkara could see shapes moving at the tree line. Large shapes. Reptilian, if her sensors were reading correctly, each one massing at least 200 kilograms. Razorbacks, Margaret explained, checking her rifle. Native predators. Usually they stay away, but every few months they get brave. Last time they tried this, we lost 3 greenhouses. You have weapons? Of course we have weapons, Ambassador. We're human. We have weapons, contingency plans, and a standing bet on how long visitors last before they start screaming. Current record is 45 minutes. You're at 52, by the way. Very impressive. One of the creatures charged the settlement's outer wall, a reinforced barrier that suddenly seemed far too thin. It hit hard enough to shake the building, claws scrabbling for purchase. Then Brutus was at the window, making a sound Thelkara had never heard before. Not quite a roar, not quite a growl, something worse. A promise of violence wrapped in fur and fury. Oh no, Tommy said quietly. He's upset. That's upset? What does angry look like? You really don't want to know. Margaret opened a side door, just a crack. Brutus, you're clear. Try not to make too much mess this time. The honey badger squeezed through the opening and charged toward the razorbacks with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for free buffets or imminent death. The predators, each one 20 times his size, turned to face this new threat. What happened next was the kind of thing nature documentaries usually edited out for being too disturbing for general audiences. Brutus hit the first razorback low, claws finding soft tissue under scales, jaws clamping on something important. The creature screamed, trying to shake him off, but honey badgers don't shake off. They hold on, and they keep biting, and they don't stop until something breaks or dies or both. The other razorbacks tried to help their packmate. This was a mistake. Brutus treated them like a combination buffet and obstacle course, moving between them with liquid grace, finding weak points, exploiting them ruthlessly. One razorback retreated, then another, then the rest, dragging their wounded with them, fleeing back into the jungle from a creature that weighed less than their heads. Brutus returned 15 minutes later, covered in blood that wasn't his, looking extremely pleased with himself. Margaret let him back in, and he immediately went to his water bowl, drinking deeply before collapsing next to Tommy with a satisfied grunt. Good boy, Tommy said, though his voice shook slightly. Very good boy. Thelkara realized. She'd been holding her breath. That happens regularly? Every few months, Margaret confirmed. Like I said, we're hard to get rid of. The jungle's tried. Failed every time. Because of the honey badger. Because we learned to work with what we have. Brutus is part of the ecosystem now. The predators know him. Fear him. Which means they fear us by association. It's not perfect, but it keeps us alive. Margaret sat down, suddenly looking very tired. Look, Ambassador. I know what you're thinking. We're crazy. We're dangerous. We brought Earth weapons to a restricted zone and created an ecological disaster waiting to happen. And maybe you're right, but we're also thriving. We're building something here. A community. A future. And yes, that future includes a hyper-aggressive mammal with anger management issues, but honestly, that's pretty on brand for humanity. Thelkara looked around the community center, at the children calmly returning to their lessons, at the adults checking equipment and discussing repairs to the damaged wall, at Tommy, sitting with his impossible pet, both of them exhausted but safe, at a settlement that shouldn't exist, protected by a creature that shouldn't be tameable, built by a species that refused to accept limitations. I need to make some calls, she said finally. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly convened 3 days later, with Thelkara presenting her findings via secure channel. She'd expected argument, debate, possibly outright rejection of her recommendations. Instead, she got silence. Finally, Council Speaker Vrek'thal, a Kildorian with 600 years of political experience, spoke. Ambassador Thelkara, let me see if I understand your proposal. You want to grant full membership to a human settlement that defeated a military strike team using a 9-kilogram mammal. Yes, Speaker. And, your reasoning? Because, Speaker, if we don't accept them, we're admitting that we're afraid of them. And fear leads to do-or-braction, escalation. We've already seen what happens when we treat humans as threats. They survive, they adapt, and they make friends with things that make our nightmares look cuddly. Better to have them inside the assembly, bound by treaties and regulations, than outside making alliances with honey badgers and whatever else they find in those jungles. You're suggesting we accept them out of fear. I'm suggesting we accept them out of pragmatism. We spent decades trying to keep humanity contained on Earth. That failed. They're spreading, slowly, but inevitably. And everywhere they go, they do the impossible. They survive conditions that kill other species. They befriend predators that should eat them. They build communities in places we designated as uninhabitable. We can either acknowledge their membership in galactic civilization, or we can keep fighting them and keep losing. Another long silence. The council will vote, Vex Moore said finally. But Ambassador, for the record, I think you've spent too much time with humans. You're starting to sound as crazy as they are. Thank you, Speaker. I'll take that as a compliment. The vote took 6 hours. When it concluded, Haven's Rest became the first independent human colony granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, with exactly one condition. They had to register Brutus as a protected diplomatic asset and promise he wouldn't leave the planet without proper authorization. Margaret accepted via video call, Tommy sitting beside her with Brutus in his lap. We can agree to those terms, she said solemnly. Though I should mention, Brutus doesn't really respond to authorization, or requests, or common sense, but we'll do our best. That's all we ask, Thelkara replied. Welcome to the assembly, Haven's Rest. After the call ended, Jex turned to his ambassador. Do you really think this will work? Integrating humans into galactic civilization? Honestly, I have no idea. But I know this. They survived everything their moral death world threw at them. They made friends with a honey badger. They built a thriving settlement in a level 9 hazard zone. If anyone can handle the bureaucracy and politics of the Galactic Assembly, it's them. Besides, imagine having them on our side when the next crisis hits. That's terrifying. Exactly. Thelkara smiled. And that's why it might just work. Back on Haven's Rest, Tommy sat with Brutus in the evening sun, watching the jungle come alive with nocturnal sounds. His mother sat beside him, quiet and content. Mom, do you think things will change now? Now that we're part of the assembly? Oh, definitely. We'll have more visitors, more trade, more opportunities, more regulations, more paperwork. Margaret sighed. Lots more paperwork. But we'll still be us, right? Still here in the jungle? Always, kiddo. This is home. Nothing's going to change that. Brutus made a contented sound, which could have meant agreement or could have meant he'd found a comfortable spot and intended to defend it to the death. With honey badgers, interpretation was always tricky. In orbit above, ships from a dozen species began arriving, drawn by news of the newest assembly member. Trade vessels, research teams, tourists, because apparently some species considered death worlds to be vacation destinations, which said disturbing things about galactic culture. And in offices across known space, military planners updated their databases, adding a new entry that would save countless lives and prevent countless conflicts. Haven's Rest. Human settlement. Galactic Assembly member. Protected status. Military action prohibited. Reason. Diplomatic immunity. And 1 honey badger. Do not engage under any circumstances. Seriously. We cannot stress this enough. Just don't. And so, Haven's Rest took its place among the stars. A tiny settlement on a forgotten world, protected by farmers, children, and one very grumpy mammal who didn't care about politics or war or galactic civilization. He only cared about 3 things: food, sleep, and the absolute certainty that anything threatening his pack would regret it for the brief remainder of their existence. Which, when you thought about it, was exactly the kind of diplomacy the galaxy needed. Simple, honest, and absolutely terrifying to anyone stupid enough to test it.